Cars offer sanctuary, but they also keep us separated, isolated, atomized. That's why car-free cities would do a lot to end the loneliness epidemic. But what if you like your privacy? Not to worry. As a permaculture urbanist, I've got you covered. In today's episode, we'll look at 4 ways to find privacy in car-free cities. And as a special bonus, I'll be introducing you to this really cool design tool today. Welcome to Edenicity, best practices for sustainably abundant cities. The first way to find more privacy in a car-free city is in the basic structure of green neighborhoods. It turns out that cities have a lot of space, but cars use most of it, crowding the rest of us onto narrow sidewalks. Public transit uses 90 to 97% less space. For example, in this picture that I snapped of start and stop traffic during rush hour, the cars took about 10 minutes to go 4 blocks. But every single person in all of the cars visible in this picture would easily fit in one city bus. And that city bus in a dedicated lane could make the same passage in less than 2 minutes, including 2 or 3 bus stops. So the secret to green neighborhoods when a city upgrades to Edenicity is to get rid of the cars and put all that space to work and fill much of that space with gardens. The way to do this is through multifamily housing, apartments, townhouses, brownstones. It doesn't need to be tall. No more than 3 or 4 floors is fine, that are mixed use and transit-oriented. And on the Edenicity plan, food secure and energy secure as well. Now, by mixed use, I mean that the ground floors are used for commercial spaces, such as shops and restaurants, and public amenities, such as libraries, schools, and clinics. By transit-oriented, I mean there's no cars. Everything is built with easy access to rail transit corridors, mostly trams. And when we build this way, there's at least 75% less noise, 75% more green space, and paradoxically, because of that mixed use, everything is much closer together, so we have much shorter errands. And that's key for people who love their privacy, because shorter errands means much less exposure to chance encounters. Now, you may be wondering about privacy on public transit. Well, there really isn't that much. However, I know from experience that people generally leave each other alone on trains and buses, and that sharing the space with people from all walks of life builds a trusting society, which we sorely need these days. So even though it isn't private, people generally respect what privacy you do have on the bus. And for those who really don't want to use public transportation, Edenicity also includes provision for bike paths. Now, of course, I know you don't want to be this guy, so part of the Edenicity plan is sheltered bikeways. So green neighborhoods are surprisingly quiet, spacious, as well as convenient. Now, the second way to find privacy in a car-free city is through building design and construction. Pictured here is a concept that I call a privacy gradient. Instead of having exterior doors that just dump you onto a street with hundreds of other front doors, you exit onto a porch where there's a little sitting area. And while you are there in full view of passerby, while you're sitting on your porch, the enclosure of that space makes most people hesitant to approach you unless they know you or have some business with you. Now, the privacy gradient is actually my interpretation of what the architect Christopher Alexander has called an intimacy gradient. Intimacy gradients are part of Alexander's pattern language, which is the title of a very influential book that he wrote in 1977, and it's a resource well known to most certified permaculture designers. Fortunately for you, you don't have to go find the book to get a sense of what it's about. There's this online resource that lists all of the patterns in Alexander's book and links them together for you so that you can actually go through this process and plan everything from a city down to the details of every interior room of your house. But if you're curious to see how this would work with Edenicity, let me know in the comments, and I might try a design exercise using mainly this tool. And as usual, of course, I've put the link to this in the description below. That's the little more that you see below. And while you're there, if you happen to see that little subscribe button, you might want to click that so you don't miss out on other great resources like this. Suffice it to say that the intimacy gradient is a well-known pattern in Alexander's pattern language. More building design and construction details that'll really matter for privacy are, of course, soundproofing, really essential for apartments, and window placement. Now, I've lived in places with good and bad examples of both, and the details make all the difference. It's the difference between hearing every word your neighbors say to not ever hearing anything from other apartments. And it's also the difference between feeling like you're living in a fishbowl and feeling very secure in your own environment. A great restaurant or cafe will have all of this too. Some of my favorite places have had both public bars or lunch counters, as well as private alcoves and even private rooms. These play especially well with mixed-use development because then they can become personal or family or group hangouts. The third way to find privacy in a car-free city is through landscaping. As a species that evolved on savannas, we like a combination of sanctuary and prospect. That is to say, we like to be in an enclosed, protected space, like a tree or a cave, and yet we also like to have a view so we can see what's coming. When we build sanctuary and prospect into our dwellings and public spaces, it satisfies a lot of what we feel as the need for privacy. So when a city upgrades to Edenicity, 100% of the homes would have courtyard views and roof access, with trees in the courtyard acting as visual screens, and to a much lesser extent as auditory screens as well. If we add water features to the courtyards, then those can supply the white noise that keeps our conversations private, even when the windows are open or we're sitting on a balcony. Now here's part of a land use concept for Edenicity, which is very stylized for clarity, showing you how buildings are arranged in blocks, and the blocks are arranged in villages with a farm belt surrounding them, and then the villages collectively have a forest belt around them. With this arrangement, every home in every village is a 3-minute walk from the farm belt. And these aren't boring monocrop industrial farms. These are rich layered landscapes with a lot going on. In addition, every home would also be within a 5 to 10-minute walk of a forest belt pictured here. 32% of the homes would have a farm view, and 10% would have a farm and forest view, though I expect a professional architect could increase those numbers substantially, even just following some of the recommendations of the design language tool that I just showed you. So in a car-free city, we have green views from every building, and easy access to organic farm and forest areas. Now, for those who really want their privacy and don't want to encounter many other people at all in the course of their day, the fourth way is to work in a rural job within the city. Here's the expanded version of the Edenicity land use concept that includes the growing zones from permaculture. And in case you're wondering, permaculture is just applied ecology. It's a design discipline with about 1 million certified designers worldwide. And just as a quick review, Zone 1 includes any food systems that are attached to the building, especially on the roof. Zone 2 would be a very short walk from the building, a little bit less intense interactions. So in Edenicity, that would be the courtyard orchards. Zone 3 is grazing, pasture, broadacre crops, and ponds, otherwise known as a farm belt. Zone 4 is the forest belt. This is not a wild forest. This is managed for timber and other forest resources. And then Zone 5 is the wilderness, which needs restoration, since our pattern of agriculture in the world has wiped out half the living biomass. Jobs that are available for those who really like their privacy would be a Zone 3 farmer, where you would have about 0.6 hectares per worker, which works out to about 1.5 acres per person. So most of the time, you're not really interacting with anybody, and you've got the great outdoors. Each village would need about 50 to 60 farmers, which works out to 1,400 farmers per town. In Zone 4, each town would need about 70 foresters, working on average about 15 hectares or 37 acres apiece. And in Zone 5, the wilderness, there would be jobs for 370 sorely needed conservationists per town, or about 10,000 per city, for a total of 60,000 rural jobs per city of 5 million or so. So there's lots of opportunities for people who grew up country or for people who really like their privacy. All right, here's the summary of where to find privacy in Edenicity. And the point that I want to stress here is that these are options that are seldom, if ever, found together in today's world. Most of us in industrial society are utterly car dependent and don't have these options. So once again, we can find privacy in our neighborhoods, which are much less noisy, involve much shorter errands, and have far more green space than a car-dependent city. We can find these in our building design and construction, so long as we attend to details such as privacy gradients, soundproofing, and window placement. There's also lots of privacy to be found in the landscaping, which under Edenicity includes courtyard, farm, and forest access. And then finally, a range of rural jobs, including farm and forestry jobs in town, as well as conservation jobs deep in the wilderness. Now, if you want to learn more about Edenicity, you can check out this video or our publications in the links below. Thanks as always to the wonderful patrons for supporting this channel. You totally rock. Take care, stay green, see you next time.